Hi and good evening, everyone. My name is John. I'm just kidding. My name is Albert, and this is Vlogs About Nothing. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your very busy day to join me. I really appreciate that. I guess, moreover, there is a little bit of honesty in that whole mislead in with the wrong first name. True story, rest in peace, Priscilla Chavez, my grandmother, my mother's mom. But I'll make this story real short, okay? So I'm an October baby. You feel me? Yeah, I'm an October. I'm a Scorpio. October 26th. Couldn't you have guessed that though? Seriously. Anyways, maybe not my particular date, obviously. Although, as a Scorpio, the part of me might say, well, why didn't you know the exact date? Anyways, I'm bringing all of these things up because, I was named Christopher for like 6 weeks. So since I'm an October baby, traditionally in the United States, you feel me? I went to a year-round school, and so I had to be a certain age by like August 1st, or you had to wait until the next year. And so I grew up my whole life being like almost a year older than everyone in my class. You feel me? So instead of being like a young person who could have been born like in July and still attended school a year younger than me, I had to wait an entire year to go to school because I was born a couple months after the deadline. And so my grandma named me Christopher to try to get me into school that year before I was supposed to. Anyways, she was a funny lady. I really miss my grandma. But yeah, tonight I want to talk about cults. Okay, so if you're new to the channel, I really, again, there's been like a pretty good increase in views and subs and so forth. So thank you guys, so much for joining. Here on Vlogs About Nothing, we specialize in hopefully making the world talk about nothing. In terms of just like how important sometimes nothing is, and how like sometimes if it's the only thing we don't talk about, nothing gets done. The whole world is full of irony. I know this, which is sort of the whole satirical, kind of improvisational vlogging you'll get here on this channel. But regardless, let's talk about cults for a second here. Link in the description below to this documentary I watched earlier on an Australian news network that discusses this particular cult that did terrible things. And obviously, there's no humor in that, right? Absolutely whatsoever. However, I think that cults are a solution to a problem. Now, what do I mean when I say that, right? Because not, a solution to a problem doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to do, or moreover, it's the right solution, right? I mean, if you think 2 plus 2 is 5, yes, you are offering a solution, but it is in fact an incorrect solution. You know what I mean? And so, as it concerns cults, right, and there being a solution to a problem, I feel like human beings are vulnerable. And I feel like not a lot of us talk about that openly. And if we do, we reserve it for pillow talk and or, our over drinking, or just, socializing in a way that allows us to talk about these kinds of things. But everyone's vulnerable. I think, the apex predators on this, as it would be terrestrial sentient beings, I feel like we all share some basic commonalities. And again, one of them is the need to feel accepted. One of them is the need to feel like as a part of a group. And often, again, we don't talk about how much a problem it is when we don't get the kind of things that we need in our lives, which are oftentimes the things that cost $0, and just a little bit more of our empathy, understanding, patience, and sort of understanding other people's perspective and how things impact their life, right? And so we're all vulnerable in that way. We're all vulnerable because, as much as we sometimes fight it, we all require the aforementioned stuff. You feel me? All of us want to feel loved. All of us want to feel like we're a part of a group that is, I would argue, yes, ultimately doing good things. Now, the problem with us not talking about our misgivings in that, we're vulnerable is that it often leads us to find alternative solutions to things that we either are uncomfortable talking about or are at a point to where we're so susceptible and vulnerable that we end up being exploited, and all the while even possibly knowing it, but just going along with it because fundamentally we all want to be a part of something that provides everyone meaning. You feel me? And oftentimes this is why, like, school's a good thing. You feel me? Public, private, socialization is a good thing. When you get total strangers to work together to do a project that, provides meaning, even if it is just the building of the project and it's the socialization of the people that, are socializing in that regard. Yeah, we're talking about like little kids here and stuff too. That's important. It's real important. In fact, if we teach them when they're younger how to do those things, they'll probably be more apt, ready, and able to be their best self when it comes to real life problem solving in the grown up adult world, sans Zoom and introduction of, IRL, sort of like this is a bunch of people that have come together to figure out a problem that requires complex thought, input, feedback, and discussion. You know what I mean? And so cults are just, again, are unfortunately available. It's still, we're in 2024, and there's got to be like thousands of cults out there. And yes, the dark humor side of me also acknowledges that there are many people out there who, would deem religious behavior, some secular behavior, some atheist behavior, some satanic behavior, as a kind of, I just, anytime that there is something going on in the world that is even like largely impactful, like cults in 2024, it just goes to show that human beings will forevermore and are currently just vulnerable. And the dark humor part of that joke, now that I remember right, is that, like, no, all of those things aren't cults. Although I get, like, where people are coming from, and that, the church is a cult, or the United, I mean, again, we can't categorically, because then we could, like, define everything as a cult, more or less, in terms of just trying to be funny with it or whatever. But the fact of the matter is that, again, there are cults out there who, like, really do some serious bad stuff, like take advantage of, children and women and exploit people for their labor. Like, again, cult or no cult, church or no church. I'm a member of the Catholic Church myself. Although I'm not sure how long I'll make it if I continue to talk stuff about it in terms of, I'm just saying, like, it doesn't matter. There's certain basic human rules still apply, right? And again, cults in their traditional modern day sense offer none of the securities that even I get like modern day religion does in that aspect, right? In terms of just acknowledging and accepting publicly, even if it is at that best, that, like, in terms of how people say they represent their religions and their doctrines and their beliefs, or you feel me, it's just another thing to openly have a cult where you're brainwashing people. And I made a video on this actress from Smallville, and Allison, what is her name? Allison something, and Allison Mack. And we made a video on the channel here, but it talks about how, like, a particular, and I'll put the link in the description in the video below too for this one, but talks about her experience with the cult and so forth. And again, oftentimes, and well, like, to never victim blame, right? It's not the people that join cults that are, like, necessarily bad people, in that they're just like us. They're vulnerable and they can't find the outlet to that sort of feeling that they have, that problem that they think they have, and they find it in other places from people who are willing to give them these kinds of things that traditionally friends just give, like, for free, and that the world can also give you for free too if, like, you're a decent person. But in return, you feel me, they, like, again, often exploit women, children, and often force like labor on people. And again, this is like because ultimately, the argument is like, well, commune, right? And then moreover, and it doesn't apply or correlate, but like transitioning to like even larger philosophical principles, so like socialism or communism in this regard. But the implementation on a basic level isn't even, possible in that regard, because it's been proven time and time again that like sometimes things that start out as like a little commune or whatever, a little hippie movement or something, turns into this like thing that it was ultimately like trying to not be, but in even weirder way, because it's still categorically just lawfully allowed weird behavior, in that organized religion is one thing but occultish behavior is another, again in that its practices isolate publicly, in terms of how they feel about the world and so forth, and just put victims in a more awkward situation than they already are in, you feel me, in terms of wanting to leave, or and again, it's all fair game when it comes to humor and freedom of speech and all of these things. And I think like the biggest, like the running joke, I would say the ultimate punchline ultimately of all cults, of all occultish, of all organized religion in that way, is like Scientology, obviously, right? In the way that there are lots of people who have publicly spoken out, like wanting to get out of the church, but it's like really, really tough, you feel me, because of all of their rules. That's a little bit more cult than like the church is, even in that, you know, policies and procedures on an administrative level enacted within religious doctrine is just something I personally don't think is a viable, sustainable practice, in that there is a separation of church and state. And it's either like you're a cult or you're a church. You feel me? But they're distinct. There is a difference. You know what I mean? Again, in that the acknowledgement of the treatment of its members and public records and so forth. And so, again, I say that because I was even thinking about this. Scientology is like every other religion, right? In that it ultimately tries to do good. Most people could probably argue that it may not do as good as it's intended out to be, but Scientology actually has its roots from L. Ron Hubbard, right? Who actually was real good friends with a guy named Robert Heinlein, who, before his foray into the beginning of Scientology, was a science fiction writer, and so I think, honestly, in a very, I guess, blasphemous kind of a way, that science fiction and the mind and creativity and people can, concoct some really cool stories, and whether it's lore or myth or mythical or folk or whatever, you feel me? Even if it's organized religion, in that if you're atheist or secular or whatever, it's just, I think people can be pretty creative, and obviously, if you're a science fiction writer and your buddy's a science fiction writer and you're discussing ways on how to make the most money in one's life, and religion is the principal topic, and then one person of those two happens to start a religion called Scientology and it does really well, and like 80 years later it's has billions of dollars in its private endowments and all these things, like that's a pretty successful business, dare I say, in terms of, right? I mean, in terms of the scaling of such like monumental sums of money and influence globally in just a relatively short period of time. So, what I've just said is all fact checked in terms of like, I'm a heavy science fiction reader. I read a lot of Robert Heinlein, and even before I knew of Scientology, I knew that L. Ron Hubbard was a science fiction writer at one point in his early life, because he didn't start Scientology till he was a lot older. And again, I'll include the link in the description to the video that I can recall that from too, because it's kind of interesting. The whole movement and beginning of Scientology has some really interesting roots, and so, but again, I just I think that self-esteem means a lot, and people need to feel valued, and cults are not necessarily the way to go. So I'm also going to be dead when I mean this. Like, I'm also going to include a link in the description below to like numbers that you can call to talk, like a mental health hotline that you can talk to somebody about if, you are in fact in one of those situations. Because again, like, as an advocate of, free will and all human beings being treated equal, like, why wouldn't that be a viable thing to have on the screen? And just in case somebody, does ever feel like they need to reach out and talk to somebody because of the kinds of things they're going through in their own life, which can include being in a cult. Yep, cults are still a thing, ladies and gentlemen. So we're talking about them. I guess we talked about them for a few minutes. All right, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Thanks again for watching all the videos and all the new subs and everything. I really appreciate y'all. Hope you guys have a really good night, and we'll talk to everyone really soon. Bye.